Hello! I'm changing how I do my reviews, and it's a little bit scary. Back when I first started getting into gaming, I only covered video games, and I only had a website, not a YouTube channel at that point. And I used the 1 to 10 scale, and that's what I've used for over 3 years. And I did that because it's the industry standard for video games, and it helps you show up better on aggregators such as OpenCritic, and I'm still honored to be listed on OpenCritic as an official critic. But I really should have changed this a long time ago because scoring games really sucks, and it always has, and I've never liked it. In fact, I think the existence of review scores is an overall damaging thing to the industry, regardless of what it is. The reason for that is there's no agreed upon term for the scale. For example, a 7 from me and a 7 from another reviewer and a 7 from a bigger outlet can all mean very different things. There's no agreed upon definition. And on top of that, it's not even a 1 to 10 scale because most outlets and reviewers will never score a game below 6. There's a couple outliers games that does happen to, and I've done it, but it's rare. And the reason for that is games that are cut and dry bad games are not worth a reviewer's time to review in the first place. There's a ton of games. It's just not worth the time, it's not worth the effort. So really the scale ends up being 6 to 10. And within that smaller scale, nobody agrees on what means anything. And the important part of that is each reviewer has a different interpretation of what a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 means. Well, every reader also has a different definition. Every person watching a video has a different definition. Because of that, scores really serve no purpose. In fact, it's worse than that. How many people have I led astray? How many people did I push away from a game they might have enjoyed because I gave it a 7, and the person watching my work, watching my content, if they didn't dig into me and learn how I score things, my taste, who I am, they don't know that my 7s does not mean a bad game. They wouldn't know that because there's reviewers who score games as a 7 and it's a bad game. On top of that, the existence of scores kind of sits games into two boxes, good and bad. And it shoehorns us reviewers into being the people that puts a game into one of those boxes, good or bad. I don't think that's my job. My job is to dig into a game, its intricacies, its design, and show you, not just tell you, what I think works, what I think doesn't work, what I like and why, what I don't like and why, what I think the game does well, what I think it does terrible, who I think the game who I think might like the game, even if it's not 100% for me. When I went to Origins Game Fair, this is what pushed me over the edge because I review board games now and numbers really are not as much of a thing in the board game sphere. There's very few reviewers that I know of that use actual numbers and use that kind of scale. And I kind of did just for consistency because when I started it board games second and I'd already done video games that way, so I just kind of kept it. But I'm up at Origins and I'm straight up ignoring a bunch of games because with scoring games I have a very narrow pull on what I'm willing to review because I don't like to score games bad unless I have to, and sometimes I do, but it's not pleasant. It's not enjoyable. I would rather talk about things I like than things I don't. And the thing about it is, the way I view reviewing is it goes back to those boxes. Good and bad is not my job. Informing you is my job. Giving you all the information you need from my perspective and giving you reasons why I feel the way that I do, so that you can take your own biases and gaming personality and mash it against mine to form your own conclusion on whether or not a game is worth your money. It's far more complex and nuanced than just this game is good, this game is bad. Because good and bad are subjective, and scores look and feel objective. And if you don't believe me, go to any video game forum, go to Reddit, or any public internet video game space. You know what happens every single time? They take those scores and wield them like a weapon to reinforce their own opinions and to prove everybody else that would disagree wrong. If a game has good scores, well, then it is an objectively good game, and if you don't like it, you're wrong, and they'll beat you with it. And if a game has bad scores and you happen to like it, well, you're objectively wrong because it has bad scores, and they're going to take those scores and they're going to beat you with it for being wrong. That's toxic, and it's not healthy for the industry. Either one, board games, video games. But I was limiting myself, and my partner is the one that kept pulling me to stuff that I would have not looked at on my own. And the thing about it is I have my particular tastes. So when it comes to board games, I like heavier things. But that does not stop me from being able to enjoy other types of games, even if they don't end up being my favorites. It doesn't stop me from being able to analyze those games, because there's a lot more to games than just being light and heavy. And sometimes a light game can be too light to really work, but also a heavy game can be too convoluted to work. But I came home with a bunch of board games, and I'm excited to review them. And I got to thinking about it looking at small box games kind of like this. This is Pocket Ops by the Grand Gamers Guild. This is a $15 game, and I've always factored in price to my reviews. I could tell you everything about this game. I could tell you what works, what doesn't work, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, who I think it's good for, and who I don't. What I cannot do is tell you what in the world I would score this. And faced with those situations, I would just avoid those games altogether. Scoring something like this would be extremely difficult, because I prefer heavy games. Those are my favorites. I do like this. By the way, this is not a review. I'm just using this poor game as an example. I will actually review this at some point. I like it, but I prefer heavy games. So is it going to end up being one of my favorites? Probably not. Now, reviews are subjective, and my tastes matter doing them. You don't just want a bland, generic rundown of just what a game is. You would go to a rules summary or something for that. So I could justify in giving this a low score, maybe even a 6. This is like the opposite spectrum of games I generally really, really like. Does that sound fair? I mean, I could certainly justify it just purely by using my tastes. Well, no, it's not fair, and it's a misrepresentation of the game. On the flip side, I can't really find anything wrong with the game. And it's only $15. That's really cheap. So if I can't find anything wrong with it, and it's cheap, would that make it a 10? No, because that's also misrepresenting the game. Because it's entirely possible to have a game where nothing's wrong with it. It works as intended. There's nothing wrong. But you or I or somebody just doesn't enjoy it that much. Because, again, things are subjective, not objective. So that leaves you in the middle. Maybe give it an 8. Well, there's going to be a lot of situations like this. If all the games get 8s, then the 8 has no meaning. So, what do? Well, in my case, I just kind of avoided anything that was out of my comfort zone. And I don't need to do that. Because, and not to be arrogant, trust me on this, I'm not, but I am good at this. I'm good at this because it's what got me this far for 3 years, because I'm bad at a lot. I'm bad at making connections. I'm bad at networking. I'm bad at managing my social media. So my reviews, my writing, my analyzing of games has gotten me this far. So I can take a game like this and I can review it. I can review it well. I can make sure you're perfectly informed, tell you what I think, tell you its pros and cons, and maybe it doesn't end up on the top spot of my shelf. But I can bet you I can find the audience for this game whose it would be on their top shelf. And I don't do that by assigning scores to it, because a score is missing all of the context, all of the nuance, everything that I put into a review. To a number, that means different things depending on who's looking at it. And that's not the right way to go about this. So I'm changing it. From this day forward, this is October 8th, October 8th, 2021. All future reviews that I publish either on YouTube or my website will be unscored. What I'm going to do, and I mean this makes me nervous, because there's a reason that, especially on the video game side, that it's the industry standard. And that's because it's normal, it's what people expect. And on the video game side, it's what a lot of people use. A lot of people do not consume the reviews. They scroll down to the bottom and look at the score. Or they skip to the end of the video and they look at the score. And anybody that does that with my content, I'm going to lose, because they're not going to read the review. They're not going to watch all the way through the review. But it's a loss I'm willing to take, because the reality of it is, if you do that, as far as the algorithms are concerned, Google, YouTube, you didn't help me at all. But more importantly, I didn't help you, because the number doesn't mean anything. You took the number and your own interpretation of it and missed all of the vital context of how I arrived at that conclusion. So it was, at best, useless to you. At worst, it was misleading to you, because there's a disconnect in between what you think of that number and what I think of that number and what 10,000 other reviewers think of that number. So instead of scores, the body of my reviews are going to be the same as they are now. Nothing changes. I'm still going to write the same way that I do. I'm still going to analyze the same way that I do. But when you get to the end of the reviews, I've always had a pros and cons list and then a score. Well, the score's gone, and I'm going to be a little bit deeper with the pros and cons. I'm going to tell you what I think the game does well, what I think the game doesn't do well, its highs and lows, because most games have both. Whether they were originally scored a 6 or a 9 or whatever, most games have a little bit of both. I'm going to then give you a summary of my thoughts on it, its value to me as the type of gamer I am, which, with the things I like, which I will outline later or when I do the reviews. Then I'll tell you who I think will like this game, if I think it has a viable audience, if I think it actually, if I'm reviewing a cut and bad dry game, it wasn't intentional. I didn't think it was going to be that way when I started reviewing it, because why would I want to do that? Who am I benefiting? And then I have to play through it and put all the time into it. I don't want to do that. It does happen, and I'm always angry when it happens, and I'll leave you all that to come to your own conclusion on the information that I've given you. And if it happens to be one of my favorites, if it really blows me away, then I'm going to give it a golden shield, which is going to be my logo, but golden. And this does not mean that the game would have been a 10 out of 10 or anything like that if I was still using scores. Nor does it mean that you should compare two Golden Shield games to each other. All it means is that it's one of my favorites. It's something that I really, really love. And that's it. It'll probably be a rare award, and it does not mean that if a game did not get it, that it's bad. Under no circumstances does it mean that, because it's going to be a rare award. If I think a game is bad, you'll know it in the body of the review. And that's what I'm going to go with from now on and see how this goes. Because scores are just bad for the industry, either one. And I'm using them for board games too, and I never should have started doing that. I should have They're different, and I should have reviewed them different. But I'm removing scores. I'm not removing. I'm not going to score video games either. Now, any previous review that I've already done and scored is going to remain the exact same where it is. I'm not changing it because that would be a complete and utter nightmare, especially in regards to aggregators. And I would have to, we're talking days, weeks of work just trying to change stuff around, and a lot could go wrong, and I'm not going to do that. So this is about looking forward rather than behind. And that's how my reviews are going to be from now on. Now, I think that's it. I tend to ramble, so I'm going to try to end it here. If you enjoyed this video, liking and subscribing is immensely helpful. I've also left a couple links down in the description below. One on my website where you can find the bulk of my written content, and a Ko-fi page if you feel like tossing in a donation. And on those notes, I did mention in my Origins video that I am reworking the site, and I still am doing that. I'm also thinking of doing a Patreon, and I could use your help with this on how to do it, because I'm really not sure. But the thing about it is, this isn't, how I said I am good at this and bad at a lot of other stuff. I am bad at this part. I've had a Ko-fi, but everybody I talk to, almost nobody knows what it is. Everybody knows Patreon. But the thing about Patreon is you get benefits for using it to support a creator, and I'm not sure how to work that kind of thing in with what I do with the written reviews, the video reviews, and that kind of content. So if anybody has any ideas, feel free to hit me up. You can email me. My email is all over the place on my channels and my platforms. You can message me on Twitter. I'm terrible at using Twitter, but you can reach me there. There's a contact me on my website, or you can just leave a comment in the comments below this video. But yeah, any ideas, I would appreciate them. In any case, thanks for watching, and until next time.